last role that I had with the Walt Disney Company, I worked as an animal medical records associate at Disney's Animal Kingdom. So with that role, you might be going, what? Which is exactly how it was prior to getting that role. I had no idea it existed, which hence my emphasis on in the last video or two about making connections and making the most of those connections. Ask questions, and a lot of times when people realize your ambitions or your zeal for something, they can't help but want to help you, and that's how I found out about that position. At that time, my education managers knew that I wanted to go to vet school, that's what my goal was, and that I was not willing to stay with the company if I didn't find a role that would really help me in my veterinary career. They communicated with that team and they were like, hey, we have an explorer here who's interested in the role, learning more about it, who wants to do this, can she shadow? So I got to choose between which medical record role I wanted to shadow and whatever else. So I did that. I got to shadow both teams actually, and yeah. And it's really just as a whole, I feel like a lot of things are gatekept, which I don't know if it's intentional or not, but you don't know until you know. And a lot of times you don't know unless you know someone who knows someone, which literally is what happened to me. So I'm speaking from experience. And even when I spoke to people who worked at Disney, and I told them what I did, they were like, oh wow, I had no idea that that existed. So a lot of the interests, a lot of the things are very niche, especially within ASC, which is animal science in the environment. So it's just if you don't know about something, you can't even work towards it because you don't know that it exists. So that's the biggest frustration in general, I feel with a lot of STEM fields, with a lot of roles, a lot of careers in STEM, which is definitely another video I can make regarding more STEM related topics. You don't know until you know, and you may never know, and that just might be because the way that the role is titled. You don't know, you didn't even know to look up those combination of words, or you personally don't know anyone who has any connections to that. It was just very lucky. And then literally the day that I went to shadow one of the teams, it just so happened that an opening was posted about the adjacent team. That was very confusing when I put that. So there's two records teams, and so the one I was shadowing for is still an ASC, but a different department, but in the same building, literally down the hall. It's really confusing the way it was. But I was shadowing for that team, and whenever the opening for this team opened up. So whenever I shadowed this team, I made sure to let them know, hey, I'm interested more so in this role that opened because it's open. So if you know the people on this team, let them know that I'm interested, and let them know that I'm applying and help me out. So this team definitely helped communicate with this team and was hey, we have an explorer, because whenever I shadowed, I was still a wilderness explorer. You're hey, I have an explorer here is interested in this role that opened up, and that definitely helped me. But even how I learned about that opening up was interesting, because I was standing in our meeting space for wilderness explorers where we go before we go out on stage, and someone was completing trainings on their computer or something, and they were oh, this role opened up. They didn't know what my interests were. They didn't know that I was going to shadow that team. And there were probably only 4 people in that room, because everyone else had started to go off on stage. I stayed back because I was going to get a ride on a golf cart up to Rafiki's, because the park is big, and you don't want to be sweaty for a shadow. So the team was bringing me up there, and we were getting ready to go. And this person who just so happened to be doing a training in a room saw that opening and just said out loud, oh, there's an opening. And then I was wait, I'm about to shadow the sister team. And so it was just really stars align kind of moment. Definitely happened. Then, and literally again, with the people around you and the management and the mentors being so helpful, while they were driving me up to backstage Rafiki's, they were helping me prepare for the shadow, and like, you know, giving me pointers even like about the role that opened up, and like they airdropped a screenshot of the role so like I could ask questions about it while I was shadowing the sister team. And like, it was just so many things like that. Again, the stars literally aligned for me, and like, and that's just like really, you know, right place, right time, and just being around people who know your zeal, and just like, you know, and a bit of luck. That's literally actually what happened. And so whenever I think about that, I'm like, wow, if like any one person weren't there, like, you know, a few second difference had happened, you know, I don't know how to, if I would have gotten a role, or I have no idea. I don't go into what ifs, so I'm just happy that things happened the way that they did. But yeah, so I got that role, and I worked in that role for a few months, and from there I was able to not just like shadow, but actually like speak with the veterinarians at the park, and I got to like discuss a research paper that one of the veterinarians published, and like, you know, I definitely got a lot of help from there. And just even beyond the vets, like I had like keepers who were helpful to me. I had veterinary technicians are helpful to me, even people beyond that medical role. There was like a lot of people who were on my side, which is very helpful, because there were times where just throughout my journey at Disney, it might seem like it was all like flowers and roses. It was really hard. Again, I was like still in school. I didn't finish my graduate program, which I didn't take, you know, that long to do it. It's a 2-year program, so it took 2 years. But like, I literally had 2 or 3 role changes in that span. So like, you know, learning new things, acquiring that knowledge, you're acclimating to a new team of like various sizes. You're still in school as a full-time student. Like, things really did get hard, and there were many times while I was like working or like studying where I know I said this previously in another video. I was like, wow, if I were doing like one less thing, I'd be way less stressed. But I had clear-cut goals that I was not going to compromise on in mind, and so I was like, I'm going to see every opportunity that's given to me through. I'm going to give it my all. So definitely those cheerleaders that I had throughout all 3 programs, they definitely helped me. So just in general, like, that was my personal journey through Disney. I had 3 roles, 2 internships, 1 job, and I got to work in 2 different parks. I got to meet people from different walks of life. I grew a lot as a person. So that's the one thing, like, you have to really be able to embrace growth. I feel like you're going to change somehow, some way during your stay at Disney. Definitely depends on your role and things like that, and what your motivations are. But for me personally, I would not have, I don't know, I feel like I wouldn't have been as mature of a person or well-versed of a person had I not had those experiences. So like, I'm very thankful to have been able to do the things I did in a relatively short amount of time. I was only with the company from February 2022 until October 2023. I just realized that. So like, yeah, a lot of personal growth, a lot of academic accomplishments, a lot of professional accomplishments. And I definitely took the time to express my gratitude to those who were helpful to me along the way, and just like kept them updated. And yeah, so it was a very interesting experience. And overall, it's just, I would recommend trying to, you know, get an internship with the company. There are different kinds of internships. Like CP, again, it's like random, you don't really get a choice. You know, so really your introduction, you're like foot in. But as a professional intern, there are a lot of professional internships, a lot of great ones. They're really hard to get into. I knew someone who tried for dozens, and like literally their like last possible role that they could get, their last application, like, you know, that they're going for after trying for so long, they like finally got it, but even then it's not a guarantee. So it's just like seeing what aligns with you, and even then, if like you don't fit it on paper, a lot of times there's an interview, that's your time to shine. I definitely have met people who are in a field different from their degree plan, or in a field that they didn't anticipate, but they let the team know like, hey, even though I don't have experience in XYZ, I'm willing to learn. You have ample opportunity not only for personal growth but professional growth, and like your interviewing skills to like work on that, and like, you know, your resume building skills. It's really just, it's up to you, your experience. A lot of people are there just for fun. Again, just for the perks, just to say they worked at Disney, just to do it, you know. Maybe you'll get college credit, maybe you won't, you know. People have different motivations. So you really have to sit and like ask yourself and consider, or don't, you know, again, it's up to you. What you want to do, what you want to accomplish, and go from there. And again, thankfully, like things progress for me like that in an upward trajectory. But overall, if you stick it through and you make the most out of it, it's, at least in my experience, it's very much worth it. Growing pains at times, but the pros largely outweigh the cons in my experience. So just speaking from that, I'd say, you know, why not? You never know until you know. So that concludes my 3-part series on Disney. For sure, I have a plethora of other topics I'd like to discuss and tackle, but hopefully that was informative. I tried to keep it general on purpose because it's really teach your own what you make for it. I can't say what your experience would be, even if you have the exact same roles or like path as I did, it's still going to be different because you're you. I mean, you know, it's going to be individual, but don't let the prospects scare you. Like, embrace that uncertainty, and as opportunities come, as moments come, make the most of it. Cause that's really all that you, that's all, there's really all you can do, and just like do your best and be satisfied with that, and like, you know, hopefully, you know, you're rewarded for your determination, and your diligence. For the role, my last role with the company, I didn't have a costume. I wore business casual, it was like an office setting. When people would ask me what I did, I'd say that I clickety-clacked, literally. I'm on a keyboard, and just managing like the fine-tuning, like managing and fine-tuning details, with like health records and things like that. So just know that there's an abundance of roles out there. You can, there's like a like subscription or like email newsletter that you can sign up for, where you're notified of roles with the company, which is honestly the easiest way to keep up with it. Because again, if you don't know like the exact words to look up, you won't even know that a role exists. And if you don't know someone who knows someone who knows someone, you know, again, you don't know that role exists. So there's pretty much like, I feel like it's safe to say, whatever you're interested in personally, like the company has something that can cater to your interests. Now, I can't say to what extent, that's where like, you know, personal research and diligence comes in, but just know, even if you look it up, there still could be things that aren't really public out there, things that aren't well published or advertised out there. So just be curious, keep curiosity at the forefront of all that you do, for sure. Don't be afraid to take risks and ask questions. Of course, take calculated risk. Like, don't just like jump into things and like, you know, you're overwhelmed afterward and it's hard to like back out. It's like I said, at Disney, everything comes with a cost. You know, so like you want to be mature and like have well thought out decisions, but definitely just be able and like be comfortable venturing out of your comfort zone. That's the biggest thing. That's when we experience growth. Whenever you encounter new challenges and then you overcome them, whether you conquer it all at once or you steadily overcome it, you never know until you know. So just again, with the open-mindedness and whatnot, it's very crucial to have, especially at such a large company. I will say at the company, you're a number. You're a number. Maybe on your individual team, you have a name, but overall, you have a number. So within your world, within your role, stand out that way that you can in the best way possible. And like, even like whenever I was applying, even when I was applying to be a professional intern, whenever I was a CP, I had people that I didn't even know, like, knew about me personally, vouching for me. Because whenever you like transition roles, like one thing I didn't know that they do, they ask your leaders, which leaders over not just like your location. So like for me as a CP, not just over the seas, but over like world nature. World nature as a whole has leaders. Those leaders knew about me, and that's because like I was good with guests. I had gotten a lot of guest recognitions, and yeah, I had, whether I like it or not, I have great work ethic. So I'm like going to stand out in that way that people are going to like recognize me for that. So that very much worked in my favor. And like, again, like, you know, you're just a number. There are a lot of people applying for the role that you want. That helps you to stand out whenever people know of you, at least, and your accomplishments and of your determination and things like that. So just be aware, like, even if you don't think like you're being noticed or whatever else, you are. There's always someone like watching. You're always watching. This is like, can be scary, I admit. And I didn't realize after the fact where I'm like, oh, I had leaders that I don't even know personally. Like I don't even know their names now, and I don't think I knew them then. That after, like, you learn afterward, they like vouch for you. And I remember telling one of the leaders, hey, I'm gonna be leaving my CP role a week early to do this role. So I'm like, how does that transition go? And he was like, you'll be great for the role. And I'm like, I don't know you, you know, that kind of thing. But like he knew me and things like that. But there are ample opportunities for recognition at the parks, like whether the guests themselves like go through the app and like recognize you. Of course, there's always the verbal, like, oh, thank you so much, like blah blah blah. But they can like formally like do like a thank you and send it out to you, and like your leader and your like manager is also notified that you got that recognition. Your peers can recognize you, so I've definitely had peers recognize me, like, hey, so-and-so did this and it was great, you know. Like, you can make it as personal or generic as you want. And even I've had a leader congratulate me or like say like, wow, you did this exceptionally well, I'm going to recognize you. And I've had managers do the same. So at all levels, definitely that just helped me throughout the roles, that I had that background, that I had those acknowledgments, I had those formal acknowledgments that you could pull up and like other people can see, like, this person was recognized because they're good at their job, they're good at what they do, that they put care into what they do. And that definitely plays a role. Like, does it like monetarily play into things? No, but if you want to progress in your role, if you want to switch into another role, having that on your record card is invaluable and can help you get a role over someone else who has no recognitions and things like that. So it's really all eyes on you, which again is very scary to say, but that's the truth. And especially if you're in a guest facing role, it's crucial to be aware of like your demeanor and like how you carry yourself, and like how, when you can't help but present yourself in a certain way because Disney look, and just your interactions and things like that. It's all so important. And again, it's just like my people skills developed like so much, which I already had like background. Like, I was a resident assistant in undergrad, and like I worked on teams before, like as a vet tech and things like that. So like I knew how to interact with people. I knew how to team build, so that definitely helped me. But you know, for the most CPs coming in when they're like 18, wide-eyed, like, oh well, I don't know how the world works kind of thing, you're gonna get invaluable skills just working with people and speaking to people and things like that, and also standing up for yourself too, which is kind of hard to do in a company where you're a number, so you really have to like manage that, that's a whole other can of worms. But like as a whole, your communication skills are going to grow exponentially. You're going to become more extroverted, or at least become more comfortable being extroverted by default in this role, in any role that you do with the company. And even if I work in an office backstage where I didn't really interact with guests, you're still interacting with the people around you and things like that. So there's ample opportunity to work on whatever skill you want to work on, and things like that. And there's so many like options, you know, for like roles. It can be overwhelming, and just the process of getting those roles can be frustrating. It's really a process, and a lot of times it requires patience, which personally for me, I'm not a patient person, so like thankfully I didn't have to go through that. But again, like if you're with such a large company and you have like, you know, these roles that might be highly coveted, or even roles that aren't really highly coveted but just don't have a lot of spots, or just like have a lot, whatever the case may be, you really have to be flexible. You have to be willing to adapt to a plethora of situations. Yeah, I am confident in saying that I would not be as well-rounded a person as I am today had it not been for the company. Even beyond just like the professional and personal growth, just like, again, I didn't go to Disney growing up, so like being able to go to the parks at certain points, like whenever I want, and like interact with all these people and things like that, it was a cool experience. Like, and that's coming from someone who like doesn't really get enthusiastic that easily. Not really, you know, I like thrill rides, but I'm not really a thrill-seeking girly, you know, that kind of thing. So like that's coming from me, you know, from sourpuss me, where I'm like, I do acknowledge that it is a really cool and unique opportunity, but just know with that, like the costs associated with it. Like, there are times where like you really have to remember your core values and like the why behind what you do in order to like stick it through. I know a lot of people who turned, or a lot of people who hated their roles or hated their time there, and like it's kind of sad to see, because they come in just like, wow, I'm like doing this, I'm really here, and they leave early or they leave miserable. And you just don't want to have that experience, you know. And even if you do prepare and like, you know, and you're like, I have an open mind, I have these goals in mind, you know, regardless, I'm going to make the most of it, things could still go awry. And that's just the reality of it. You don't know until you know, but don't be afraid. Don't let it deter you. A lot of things you just push through and it gets better. I felt like for me with the roles, and with the role like really got frustrating, whatever role I had, or things really got hard, like soon after it was like, oh, here's the payoff, you know. So keep that in mind. I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but I do want to be real. Like, sometimes you can anticipate what you're getting into, sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't. That's life. And that's life. So hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully all three parts were equally informative, maybe some more than others, depending on like what stage of life you're in, or like what you're interested in, whatever else. Any questions, concerns?